This has been a big interfaith week for me. On Monday, I had an appointment with an interfaith couple. On Tuesday, a very productive meeting with the Coalition for Black and Jewish Unity. On Wednesday, a gathering of the Religious Leaders Forum, a group of senior faith leaders who meet to discuss and act on social and moral values of their faith tradition. On Thursday, I listened to Rabbi Josh on the most dramatic podcast with Chris Harrison, talking about the Netflix series Nobody Wants This, about a young, hip, hot rabbi in an interfaith relationship, and then binge-watched the entire series. And then on Friday, I turned to the Torah portion. It sounds like it could be its own Eric Carle book. On Monday. This week's Torah portion, Parshat Vayera, contains two favorite biblical stories. First, where Abraham and Sarah are sitting in the entrance to their tent as they welcome three guests who turn out to be angels. Actually, they more than welcome them. They practically beg them to stay as they wash their feet, which is necessary since they've just come in from the desert, and they feed them. This is the quintessential story of welcome in the Torah. Because as the rabbis explain in the commentaries and the Midrash, Abraham is recuperating from surgery, having just circumcised himself, yes, just circumcised himself, in faithfulness to the covenant. And despite obvious pain, he nonetheless leaps up to greet these strangers, a significant gesture considering the circumstances. And then further substantiating the value of welcome, the same commentators teach that God had actually been in the middle of paying Abraham a get-well visit, and Abraham, seeing the strangers coming his way, runs away from the presence of God to welcome them. So you can see why the rabbis teach us that welcoming is one of the most important of all mitzvot, more significant even than the highest of all sacrifices in the temple. And the Torah doesn't just teach us this lesson once, but reinforces it 36 separate times, repeating over and over again, welcome the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. The consummate stranger, however, also appears in this portion in her own story, Hagar, the woman who Abraham takes as a second wife in order to have a son, and whose name actually means the stranger. She is cast out with her son Ishmael when the family dynamics turn dysfunctional. Hers is a painful story, especially when juxtaposed with the one of welcoming at the beginning of the Parsha. At the Religious Leaders Forum meeting Wednesday, the themes of the week merged. The people around that table represented a variety of Christian churches: Catholic, Baptist, Lutheran, Armenian Orthodox, the Church of Latter-day Saints, Church of Christ, as well as Islam and Judaism. In theory, it's easy enough to welcome one another because we are people who know each other and have been meeting quarterly for years. We hugged when we arrived and when we left. We ate together. We talked about our families, what our children are up to, and what's new since we were last together. And with our discussion theme being the power of unity, we all agreed that in this highly charged climate that we are living in, multifaith relationships are crucial. We must support each other, even though we come from different places and have different ideas. And believe me, the people sitting around that table certainly have different ideas. One member of the group expressed it through the metaphor of an orchestra, a group made up of different instruments with different parts, but all playing the same piece under the same director. I was moved when Father Aaron from the Armenian Orthodox Church told us about the time he was serving in Chicago and a Jewish cemetery had been vandalized. The rabbi called upon their interfaith council, and they came, standing together for a press conference and showing the solidarity of their faith community. And upon hearing this story, my eyes welled up with tears, reminding me of similar moments here, when Christian choirs came to sing for us after the Tree of Life shooting, and when we visited the Muslim Unity Center in a show of solidarity after a shooting in a mosque in New Zealand. Yet, despite our common acknowledgement around the table about the importance of unity over division, I don't know if this would happen today. The divide feels too big, the difference too immense. And as much as I want it to be easy, interfaith work just isn't. When conversations get tense, when people say the wrong thing, when others take offense, when we interpret based on our own values and experiences, and these things do happen, I often feel like Hagar and I want to run away. Of course I don't, because what I've learned from these groups is that it takes time and commitment, a willingness to be uncomfortable, and a resolve to build genuine relationships. As my friend and colleague, Pastor Richard White, put it, there needs to be more of a focus on understanding than on being understood. To me, this means practicing the art of active listening, talking less and listening more. It means appreciating that others have their own unique perspectives that are valid in their own right. It means seeing this divine spark in each person and honoring them as B'Tselem Elohim, made in the image of God. It means remaining open to learning from others and recognizing that they may offer insights we hadn't considered before. And it means imagining that the people we encounter are not just strangers, but possibly angels with words of wisdom, insight, and prophecy. As hard as this interfaith work can be, it can be even harder in our own community. We Jews aren't monolithic. Don't we say 2 Jews, 3 opinions? And it's the truth. Jewish tradition values discussion and debate, corroborated by history, experience, and the Talmud itself. The Talmud is comprised of arguments and questions, and even in disagreement, it preserves the minority opinion, showing respect for a variety of viewpoints. And still, there are times when the rabbis can't come to a decision, and the dispute ends in what is called teku, Aramaic for the question stands. Basically, they agree to disagree. It's the rabbinic equivalent of a tie. One of the famous examples of teku centers around wine at the Passover Seder. They couldn't decide on whether there should be 4 or 5 cups of wine, and ultimately settled with teku. Let the matter stand undecided. So then what are we supposed to do, 4 or 5? Well, today we drink 4 cups of wine at the Seder, and then we add an extra cup, Elijah's cup, just in case the answer should have been 5 from the start. Better to be on the safe side. A folkloric interpretation of teku teaches that it's an acronym for the phrase, Elijah the prophet will answer all unresolved questions. So, whether it's letting the question stand in the equivalent of a tie, or whether the answers will be answered by some future messianic age, I am comforted by Elijah's role. As he always does, Elijah brings us hope. He is the one who, when God came to him, taught us that God was not in the thunder, or in the wind, or in the earthquake, or in the fire, but in the still small voice. It is that voice that represents gentle guidance within, distinct from the loud, divisive noise all around us. The still small voice reminds us to pause, to reflect, to listen. In relationships, especially in times of disagreement, we need that voice more than ever. It nudges us to listen, to be gentle, to focus on understanding rather than judgment. When we listen, I truly believe that we can transform conflict into connection, a lesson I learned from the interfaith group this week. As Thanksgiving approaches, we'll gather with family and friends around the dinner table and focus on gratitude. And I beg you, as Abraham and Sarah begged their guests to stay, to welcome each other with open hearts. Let's set aside politics and arguments. Let's focus instead on listening and understanding. Let's remember we are one orchestra bound together by the music of faith, connection, and compassion for one another. And I believe that together we can work to build a community of true welcome, where we embrace both our common ground and our difference. May we listen to that still small voice guiding us towards unity, and may we always remember to welcome the stranger, recognizing the divine spark in everyone that we meet. Shabbat Shalom.